yes, Keith was going to go next, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of young, I don't know so, but I would suspect that he would enjoy the werewolf topic.
Yes, yes,
There,
he would.
So,
yeah. Uh, I doubt Freud would care much for it. Okay, I've got a couple to bring to the table that are odd, little additions, lesser known to probably your usual movie fans out there. But if you're a werewolf fan and you were raised in the 70s and 80s, there it's probably something you're vaguely aware of or have some lost memory of seeing at some point. I'm going to start with this first one, 1974. When I saw it, I was in Puerto Rico. So I was about probably 7 or 8 years old at that point that I saw it. I can't remember which version I saw the first time in the movie theater there. It's called The Beast Must Die.
Mhm.
But it also had a version called The Black Werewolf.
mhm.
And the reason why I don't quite know for sure, I think I saw it as The Beast Must Die, but I may have seen Black Werewolf because in Puerto Rico, where I was on the Ramey Air Force Base as so a little Army brat kid, we got the international cuts of a lot of different movies. So we would get oddball things in our little local theaters, such as like, say, first time I saw The Night Stalker, I saw it as the theatrical cut that got sent to
Hmm.
overseas. And because of the weird releasing of Black Werewolf, I may have seen it as Black Werewolf and not had what they call the werewolf break, that most people are familiar with if they're familiar with The Beast Must Die. Now, all that to be said, if you haven't seen The Beast Must Die, it marketed itself as a mystery, trying to figure out for the audience to try to figure out who the werewolf is before the big reveal. So there is a point in the movie near the end, near the climax, where the movie stops and has a thing where there's a whole voiceover and it says, something along the lines of, do you know who it is? And they take 30 seconds and walk and talk. You say, try to guess who it is. And we're about to reveal who it is to you, that kind of a thing. And so that was a gimmick that the director apparently hated, but some audience critics seem to hate it, but apparently the audiences kind of liked it. But the Black Werewolf cut is the same movie, just without the werewolf break. It just keeps on going. Director hated it just because it broke the flow of the movie. But this is not necessarily a great movie, but it is entertaining, and I have fond memories of it. I think what's that movie, the most dangerous, or the story, most dangerous game, it's like a mashup of Most Dangerous Game with an Agatha Christie, say,
Mhm.
Poirot novel, with a werewolf thrown in the mix. So you have an island in which a rich guy has invited a bunch of people onto the island, so they're or into his little castle or mansion, and they're all just stuck there. And then he reveals to them at a certain point that one of them is a werewolf, and he wants to figure out which one of them is, and he's going to kill him. That's the idea. And the guy, interestingly, it starts off with him running through the jungle. And so you have this image of a black man running through the jungle being chased by a bunch of white guys who with guns and all of that. And it's extended. It's shot way too long. The director needed to edit that down. It's way too long. You have no idea what's going on. You're just following them through the woods with the helicopters chasing them. The hunters are all chasing them to get to a point where then they catch him and shoot him, and he falls down dead in front of all the people. And then of course they come over and he's not dead at all. They were shooting blanks. It was all practice, yada yada yada. That's how the movie starts, right? And so every person in this movie is a real character. They're just like you would in a Poirot novel. Each one fits a certain narrow character archetype. But the guy whose island it is, the millionaire, the big game hunter. This is what I think is unique about this movie, particularly in 1974, is that he's a black guy. That's never mentioned that he's a black guy. He just happens to be a black guy. And so while I found out on the commentary when I watched it that was the studio's reason for getting him, was they were trying to cash in on blaxploitation craze, but the thing is they never mention it. And so he's there with his transatlantic accent, and he's a visual precursor to Blade, or sometimes maybe more so to Jefferson Twilight from the Venture Brothers. But it's the same, that same look, same hair, and he progressively over the course of the movie changes from regular looking clothes to eventually by the end he's wearing tight black leather, and he's got all of the stuff all around him with the weaponry and all that, as he's going to go after the werewolf. But anyway, it's almost like a series of vignettes, like a lot of Poirot type novels and movies, where it's all just kind of let us get introduced to all these people, make all of them look suspicious, get their background, and we all try to think who's not there when maybe someone gets killed, and that kind of a thing as it breaks down. So you'll get to the werewolf break, and then it'll take you back, and then it shows you someone who's a werewolf, and things ensue. There's a twist where that person that you thought was a werewolf might not have actually been the only werewolf. There's all this kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't want to give it all away for those of you who haven't seen it, but there's a little bit of a twist there. It's based on I don't know if it's a short story or a novella by James Blish from like the 50s, but the concept is more interesting than the movie itself. But it's still one of those things you guys who've had me or listened to me on here before know I like these movies that are snapshots of the time they were made, and this one being made in 1974 is a real snapshot of that. The style in which it's made, it's rather low budget. It's I think the last movie from the Amicus production company. So if you know Amicus films, you kind of know the look and feel. Yeah. And so I think this was the last one that they did before they kind of became defunct. So anyway, it's a fun movie that I recommend. I think it's easily available. I mean, I got the Blu-ray because I wanted a nice, clean, beautiful copy to watch. But I think it's easily accessible out there if you haven't seen it. I think Amazon Prime maybe even has it.
I think it's on Tubi also.
Yeah.
Everything's on Tubi.
But for those of us who don't like the commercial breaks,
So Keith, before you go on, so can we do your second one after we go through the whole round?
Sure. And then I have a little thing I want to just touch on even after that. That's not movie related, but is werewolf related. So
okay. So C.F. Roberts.
Yeah.
That's the man himself.
No. Where? Okay. Well, you know what? I have got two that I need to bang out real quick, and then I gotta bail.
Oh,
okay.
Hate it, but gotta bail.
No, it's okay. You've been great for the first large chunk of this recording, so do your thing.
Yeah. Okay, so Henry kind of asked me to take this one, and so it was one that I haven't seen in a few years. I do not own it, and so I kind of needed to get myself a little bit of a refresher. So the first one I'm doing is The Howling. And a lot of fun. Joe Dante getting out from under the his grip of Roger Corman for the first time ever. And just along with American Werewolf in London, probably just a groundbreaker in special effects and in kind of presenting the whole werewolf thing and kind of bringing it into the modern day. Had a great time kind of revisiting it. in a small way. The werewolf in question, well, there are plenty of them, but the big one I wanna settle on is Eddie Quist. Is it Quist? Yeah, Quist, played by Robert Picardo. And this guy is a real piece of dirt. He's just a stalker slash serial killer. Much of the movie revolves around Dee Wallace's character, and she's a news reporter, and he's kind of stalking her and ends up kind of trapping her in a porno theater and is going to probably dispense with her, but the cops get a drop on him and end up killing him. There's something she sees. She comes away from the whole thing traumatized and she has amnesia, but she sees something that she thinks is very strange. You don't get a good look at it. Nobody gets a good look at it, but she ends up in therapy with Patrick McNee from the Avengers, not the Marvel Avengers, the other Avengers. But he invites her ultimately to go to this resort. I don't know, say a resort or a retreat that he holds with this group of people. And so she and her husband go out there, and they've kind of got their own issues they're working through. And as it turns out, this is a whole cult of werewolves. And Eddie Quist, the stalker slash serial killer that pursued her, is not only not dead, but is one of the werewolves. And this is a brand of werewolves. They aren't waiting for the full moon. A lot of the tropes that you see in a lot of the werewolf movies have kind of been cast by the wayside. These people just basically turn into werewolves whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Patrick McNee, is trying to get them to kind of obey a certain set of morals where they try to kind of repress a lot of their more violent urges, but the vast majority of the werewolves, and I think they basically want to just embrace those urges, which by and large they do. But this is a pretty wild movie. I don't know, just I think says a lot about kind of the therapy industry, the self-help kind of thing, or retreats and whatnot. And it's got, because it's Joe Dante, I think it's got that satirical angle behind it.
John Sayles wrote it.
John Sayles wrote it, yes.
Yeah.
And hell of a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And but a lot of fun. Crazy jam full of cult movie icons. Dick Miller's in there. Kevin McCarthy, Slim Pickens, a lot of folks. But toward the end, I don't know, it was real interesting to me. Yeah, they have this whole thing where she and I think one of her cohorts actually make it out of this place while, pretty much riddling these werewolves with silver bullets and killing most of them. But Dee Wallace, the news reporter, gets injured or infected by one of the werewolves as she's leaving, and she's like, "Well, we got to break this. We got to get this known to the public." And so her the other survivor says, "Okay, we'll do this, and we'll do it a certain way." And so she goes live on the news and turns into the saddest, cutest werewolf on earth, who looks like she isn't going to hurt anybody, but as per their agreement, her friend pretty much unloads on her and kills her. But she's but I don't know, I was talking earlier about Andy Milligan being like Edward Albee, but with monsters. This was almost like Network, but with werewolves.
Yeah.
At the end here.
Good one.
But so kind of a satirical angle there, but just a lot of fun. I don't know. I had a lot of fun revisiting it. I just kind of forgot. To me, it's just I remember that great Rob Bottin makeup design and the transformations and whatnot. And I remember it being fairly scary. What I didn't remember was how hilarious it is. And just in particular, my wife and I kind of went back and forth on this because I was talking about, well, the few things I remember was Dee Wallace being a sad, cute werewolf. I remember the nymphomaniac werewolf who actually gets away at the end, just sitting in a little restaurant or bar at the end, ordering a rare steak. And I thought that was pretty funny. And the other one I remember was Eddie Quist as like the very helpful werewolf, as one of the secondary characters is kind of going through files trying to find something on him. And he, in full werewolf body, kind of takes a file from her and puts it on the puts it on the file cabinet. And it's only then that she looks up, notices it's a werewolf, and he snarls and starts taking swipes at her, and ultimately I think he kills her. But it's kind of funny. I was just telling, she was just talking about how horrible she thought that was. And I just said, I don't know. I thought it was, if you want to break it down, I think it was an etiquette thing. I think had she just said thank you to the werewolf, he would have continued being helpful to her. And, but, it was a breach of etiquette, so she had to die. And she and I just kind of went around and around about that and kind of had a good time laughing and joking about it. But that's pretty much all I got to say on that.
Okay.
If anyone's got anything.
It's
a
my
great
favorite
movie.
werewolf movie.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
good. I haven't seen it in so many years, but I remember it. Thanks for
I
bringing
watch it.
again.
I watch it every Halloween. And, I've seen it at least 30, 40
Great bladder effects that
Yeah.
which was so revolutionary at the
The
time.
game changer for
yeah.
real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prosthetics.
Yeah, it works on a lot of levels.
Yeah. And I think yeah. But
So you
No,
need
that's-
to give us your second one, and then
second one really quick, and
Okay.
it's going in a totally different direction, but kind of the same. It's from 1985. Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf.
Oh no.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Yeah.
And yet this one as a continuation of a really great movie is just silly. And
Yeah.
my whole thing is I unapologetically love it because it's just silly. And the werewolf in question here is Stirba, played by Sybil Danning. And all I can say is queen of a werewolf cult in Transylvania, played by Sybil Danning. Enough said. And the stars Red Brown, who's probably the ultimate cheesy 80s action hero. And he is the brother of the Dee Wallace character, and he's mourning her. And he and one of her coworkers kind of get approached by Christopher Lee, who is a demonologist or occult expert named Stefan, who breaks it to him. Your sister's a werewolf, and she's never going to know peace, and she's going to keep rising from the dead or whatever until we kill the leader of this werewolf cult. And so, long story short, they go to Transylvania, have all these mishaps and adventures, and it pretty much ends up being a battle to the death between Christopher Lee and Stirba, Sybil Danning. And so big, battle royal with the werewolf cult. And I think Christopher Lee in what would almost be classic kind of Universal monster finale, both Christopher Lee and Stirba going up in flames at the end. But This just had a lot of things going for it that keeps us going back and watching this one. The soundtrack was done by a guy named Stephen Parsons, who back in the early 70s was the lead singer for a very underrated band called the Sharks.
Hmm.
And he fronts a kind of a fake goth band called Babel in this, and has a song in it that you hear over and over and over.
Yeah.
And then they have this ridiculous montage to go along with the song, which Sybil Danning was supposedly horrified by because continually got her ripping open her bustier in multiple shots. My wife back about 10, 15 years ago used to do a public access show, which kind of did, we did movie trailers and music videos. Huh?
That's how I met you guys.
Yeah. Oh, Mondo Pazzo.
Because you were promoting it on MySpace.
Okay. Yeah. I was probably back when that was actually still available. That's kind of crept off this mortal coil, at least for the time being. But she did kind of a remix montage of it, which again with the bustier ripping and all this other stuff, and she inserted both of our faces into the thing with just silly, horrified looks on her face, just popping up in this Stephen Parsons video. And we kind of had a fun time making it. But
that's pretty wild.
Yeah, Howling too.
She's your tech wizard.
She's my tech wizard.
Yeah, I've been thanking her.
Troubleshoots my microphone.
Huh? Yeah, I thank her at the end of the videos you're on. I mean, I think Dwayne, he helps me go, and Heather helps you.
My wife helps me with any like emergency stuff. Not that I've had it happen a lot, but she's my tech person. If I'm just like,
all right, I'll keep that in mind.
We all need to credit our backups.
Okay,
we should honestly shout out to all of our tech help people.
Hell yeah, man! So you've got a split, unfortunately. Richard, do you have time to do yours? Do you have time to do yours?
Yeah, I can do mine.
Okay. All right, Chuck. I appreciate it, man. We love you.
Night, Chuck. Care, have a good one. See you next time.
Good night.
See you soon.
Okay, well, sort of segueing away from that, there is a connection here because D. Wallace might be the saddest, cutest werewolf out there, but Oliver Reed is pretty darn sad. Not nearly as cute, but pretty darn sad.
Well, he's pretty handsome. He was pretty handsome back then, though.
Curse of the Werewolf, which is a 1961 Hammer film. And as you all know, there's two major studios, the name associated with horror. One is Universal Studios, the one that did the Wolfman and all those others, and the Hammer Films, British production company that started bringing back the monsters that Universal had focused on in the 30s and 40s, started bringing them back in the late 50s. And they did, Horror of Dracula, and they did Curse of Frankenstein, not necessarily in that order. And I guess they started thinking, what else can we bring back from Universal? So they said, well, let's do a werewolf. And there's some ironies involved in that, because what they chose to do was not the Wolfman. They didn't do a remake of the Wolfman, but they chose to adapt The Werewolf of Paris, which was a novel that was actually a bestseller in 1933 by a writer named Guy Endore, who was a screenwriter and at one point had worked for Universal, although for whatever reason they didn't adapt this very famous werewolf novel when they chose to do a werewolf for the Wolfman, that just kind of create him out of whole cloth. But they did Curse of the Werewolf in 1961. And it was Oliver Reed's breakout role. He had been kind of working around as a character actor and as a bad guy in some Hammer films, and they decided they liked him well enough to let him star in this. And as I said, it's based on that novel. The novel took place during the Franco-Prussian War, I believe in France, but they've relocated the plot to late 18th century Spain and early 19th century Spain. And the plot is it kind of had some strange correlations with the film I covered in another episode, Lady Snowblood, because if you remember, Lady Snowblood was conceived in a prison, and the character in this film also is conceived in a prison, and it's sort of cast on this road that he has no control over. His dharma is basically to be this killer. So what's going on? There's a evil marquis in this Spanish town, and he's a real asshole. He's a real bastard. He likes to abuse the servants. He's having a wedding feast, and cook brings a cooked goose out. His bride to be makes kind of a face, and so he basically throws the goose on the floor, makes the cook pick it up, and he kicks him in the butt, knocks him down. All the aristocrats laugh, and that's kind of tells you what the guy is about. He's a real jerk. Anyway, this beggar comes to town and finds his way into this feast, and he's begging, and the marquis makes him do a little dance and everything, and at the end of all basically the psychologically torturing this poor beggar guy. He's leading his wife up, says, "Good night, we're going to retire for the night," and then the beggar says, "Have a good night," as in, implying that he's about to go consume his marriage, consummate his marriage. And so the Marquis takes offense and has him thrown into prison, and he rots in there for years and years and years, basically loses his sanity and his semblance of humanity, forgets how to speak, and everything's all dirty and disheveled. And he has no friends other than the jailer and the jailer's daughter, who's a mute. And the Marquis, they flash forward to many years, and the Marquis his wife died because he was such a jerk. He basically drove her to an early grave, and he's all, it looks kind of like Baron Harkonnen. He's all like, pustule and gross and pallid. And anyway, he takes notice of the girl, who's quite beautiful, played by Yvonne Romaine, who is famous as one of those Hammer scream queens, quite beautiful and kind of atypical for the type that they usually focus on. She was of Maltese heritage and kind of a dark complected and quite lovely. But she has no lines in the film. Anyway, he takes notice of her, and he attacks her, and she bites him. So he throws her in prison with the beggar, who's now this kind of inhuman creature, and he doesn't remember who she is. He's so lost and gone, and he rapes her. And finally, they take her out of the prison to have another go at him molesting her, the Marquis molesting her, and she stabs him to death, and then runs off into the woods, where they say she lived like an animal for many months. And by this time, she's pregnant, having been made pregnant by the beggar, and she's discovered by this kindly couple who take her in, and she gives birth. And the wife of the couple is from a small town and quite superstitious, and she says, there's some bad news, because she's about to give birth, and it's Christmas Eve, and this is an unwanted child, and an unwanted child who's born on Christmas Eve will be cursed. And so the mute girl gives birth and dies during the childbirth, much like Lady Snowblood's mother. And so the couple raises the boy, and there's all these signs of animals dying and being killed, and they think it's a dog at first, and they think it's a wolf. So the gamekeeper goes off and looks for the wolf, and but there's all these signs that the child, who's played by a child actor through most of the film. Interestingly enough, Oliver Reed doesn't even appear in the film until halfway into the film.
Yeah,
you don't see him, and you don't really see the werewolf in full werewolf transformation until the end of the film.
You got to go through the whole saga.
Yeah.
It's like a saga.
It's a good film, and it was not successful at the time, and I understand why, because there's not a lot of werewolf in it, but it's a pretty good film. It's almost like a swashbuckler kind of film. It kind of comes across more like a historical drama than a horror film. It was released with Shadow of the Cat, which I haven't seen, another Hammer film, and but to make it short, Oliver Reed doesn't come until halfway, and he's pretty good in it. And most of us of our generation know Oliver Reed as an infamous drunk, who looked like at one point he was going to kick David Letterman's ass on the air, because he said,
I wish I'd seen that.
he's like, he had his glasses on. David Letterman says, one of his typical kind of comments, and he takes his glasses off, and he looks like he's literally just about to jump on him and beat the shit out of him.
He was a flawless actor, in my opinion.
He was great. He did a lot of great roles.
Oh, yeah.
We know him as from Oliver, from
The Devils,
the great Three Musketeers series that Richard Lester did, and the Devils. Yeah, he was a Ken.
Women in Love, yeah, Ken
Women
Russell.
in Love, yeah, Ken Russell favorite for years.
For me, it's the Assassination Bureau.
Yeah, limited.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah.
See, there's so many wonderful roles, and understandably, when he went on talk shows, they wanted to talk about his drunken escapades with Keith Moon and whoever else he was drinking with. I think it was probably
understandable.
A Graham Chap drinking buddy for a while. All the infamous drunks of London, I'm sure, gathered with him and bar hopped with him. There was a story of him and Steve McQueen, I think, just like drinking for 2 or 3 or 4 days straight. But anyway, so it's interesting to make a correlation between Larry Talbot, this character who's, there's I'm posing this as kind of a dichotomy because Larry Talbot's the most iconic name associated, but who remembers the name Leon Corledo, who's the name of the character in this?
Yeah, I was going to ask you
he's a very sad character, both as a child and as a grown up. He does a really good job of putting out that tortured. The movie starts with him crying, a shot of his eyes crying, and ends with him crying. So he is probably the most famous crying werewolf out there. But it's a good film.
It is a good
and
film.
I understand why it didn't do well. And it's still, I think, obviously, compared to the Frankenstein series and the Dracula series, they didn't have the makings of a franchise here.
No.
People weren't biting. I think werewolves probably weren't hot, for one thing, at the time, and there wasn't a lot of werewolf in the film. And Oliver Reed, got so famous subsequently that he didn't want to go back to that kind of stuff.
But it's got quite a reputation. It's pretty famous now.
Terrence Fisher.
It was when I was a kid. Yeah.
Terrence Fisher's the best, and it's a great werewolf design.
Yeah,
that hasn't really been used much.
Makeup. We love Terrence Fisher.
Yeah, the
we
makeup
love what Hammer could do with not that much money, but with a lot of. It was the first werewolf film shot in color, as I understand.
Okay.
But the audiences didn't buy it. It was released as a double feature and was kind of under the rug. But we people again of our generation, if you grew up with Famous Monsters of Filmland, you have that famous publicity shot of him strangling the actress that played his mother. They have no scenes together in the film, Yvonne Romain and he do not share any scenes together. And you have the adult werewolf strangling the actress that's playing his mother for a series of iconic shots. But it's a good film. I recommend it. It definitely. I enjoyed making a comparison with Larry Talbot and the character in Curse of the Werewolf, because both of them are very tortured, and both of the actors that played them were notorious alcoholics that probably had to struggle with a lot of those kind of loss of control issues that those characters had to suffer through.
Yeah.
So that's my second one.
So Oliver Reed was maybe like a real live werewolf, in a sense. He had his sober self and his drunk self, right?
Richard, by the way, I put a link in chat. I don't know if you can get to it or not, but it's the link to the Route 66 Lizard's Leg and Owlet, whatever it is, the one with Karloff and Cheney and Peter Lorre.
Wow.
But you're muted.
Audio.
Yep.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I've become very intrigued by the Werewolf of Paris, and I'm going to look for a copy of that because I would like to check. I did a little reading about it.
You won't believe, well, you might believe this. I don't know. I read it when I was about 8 years old.
Did you?
Wow.
Well, because of reading it, I loved The Wolf Man and I loved werewolves, so I never got a chance to see Curse of the Werewolf that long ago.
It's
but
hard
I
to
knew
find it
about
right
Werewolf of London,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of the stuff I learned about that was Roy Thomas, because he was editor in chief of Marvel Comics, and he's always put all this, packed all this info in the letter pages. So based on what he said, I went into the library, and there was Werewolf of Paris. I read
Oh,
it.
lucky you. I've never seen it in a bookstore
I
or
considered it really boring at 8. I mean, and that's not because I was 8. I mean, I was reading a lot of that kind of stuff, but so I don't know if it's objectively boring or
Well, I
not.
understand Guy Endore was a bit of a leftist, or actually quite a bit of a leftist. And there's a lot of political stuff in the novel that didn't quite. There's a little bit in the film. They definitely show the aristocrats abusing people beneath them.
It's
but
an anti-imperialist werewolf movie.
It's certainly, yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna look for that. Let's see. Any final thoughts that I have on that? Well, I guess I don't have any more, so I'm gonna sign off for the night. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Seeing you, man.
And we'll
Thanks
see
for
you next
coming.
time. All right,
See you
take it
next
easy.
time. Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.